Shanghai's lockdown might be getting extended as the city's true number of infections reportedly skyrockets. Netizens reveal more death cases online. Workers at one shuttered factory protest. Authorities told them to isolate in their dorms, but factory leaders threatened to withhold food if they didn't get back to work. What's the real cost of lockdown orders? Some in China are questioning whether the country's strict protocols are really helping protect people or harming them instead. More controversy surfaces surrounding the Wuhan virology lab. Documents show an American health agency deleted genetic sequencing details on the virus at the lab's request. And for those watching our full episode, zooming in on the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. is holding a joint drill with the Philippines and making a promise to Singapore. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we start, a quick thank you to today's sponsor, Shenyang Performing Arts. Have you ever wondered what China was like before the Communist Party took over in 1949? This show depicts just that. Shenyang showcases China's rich cultural heritage and what the regime destroyed, which is why the performance is banned in China. Captivating and uplifting, Shenyang brings to life the legendary heroes of old, portraying the spirituality and deep wisdom present in ancient Chinese tradition. Get your tickets today at shenyang.show/China in Focus. Enter the code CNINFOCUS with no spaces to waive ticket fees. Shanghai's lockdown may run longer than expected. According to a neighborhood notice that's circulating online, stay-at-home orders could stretch until next Tuesday. Local lockdown orders split the city in half, with one half shuttered under Phase 1 for part of the week, and the other closed under Phase 2 for several days after that. The notice came from a neighborhood under the first phase of lockdown. There's been no official announcement so far, but netizens are saying many neighborhoods have already issued similar notices among residents. Phase 1 is supposed to end this Friday, to be followed by Phase 2, while each half is locked down. Residents will be tested en masse for COVID-19. The city's approach follows an explosive increase in Chinese Communist Party or CCP virus cases across China, the infection that causes COVID-19. Official data from Tuesday reported about 6,000 cases in the city, marking a new high for the financial hub. But social media posts from locals seem to paint another picture. Users said that in just one town, 1,000 people tested positive, adding that medical personnel withdrew from the area. And in one neighborhood, almost all residents reportedly tested positive. Medical personnel withdrew from there too. Yet another social media post stated that medical staff became fearful while mass testing residents for the virus after 4,000 samples quickly came back positive. On top of that, another trouble is cropping up in Shanghai. Workers at one factory are speaking up, caught between conflicting lockdown policies. Factory production is supposed to be on hold for now, under the city's Phase 1 lockdown order. Videos posted online Tuesday show a large crowd of workers gathered in protest. According to the users who posted the clips, Shanghai authorities require that workers quarantine inside their dorms at the factory during the shutdown. But factory management reportedly asked them to continue working as usual, threatening that if they refuse, meals would be withheld. The hungry workers quickly took issue. In one clip, one person can be heard shouting over the crowd, saying that's to respond to the national call for epidemic control. The person appears to have been trying to dissuade the workers from protesting. But a worker immediately responded, asking, "Do you call this pandemic control?" And noting how so many workers were stuck together in close quarters. Police later arrived on the scene. One worker in the crowd was heard saying, "Follow the police to find our meals. We're starving," suggesting that the officers may help straighten out the situation and get them food. But that's not how it played out. The protest continued, while the factory eventually handed out instant noodles to workers. China is still holding on to its stringent zero COVID-19 policy. That's as many countries have already abandoned the strict lockdown approach in favor of living with the virus. Complaints are growing stronger in Shanghai as lockdown orders persist. Some residents are debating whether the rules are helping protect people or if they're actually harming them.
Phase 1 of Shanghai's full lockdown began this week, driven by rising COVID-19 infections. But the city had been under partial lockdown for weeks before that. During that time, several suicides have been reported, while some residents say they've been denied timely medical care and are in critical condition. The Epoch Times Chinese language edition interviewed some of them. Dong Yiqing's father is a uremic patient, meaning he has severe kidney dysfunction. He needs dialysis treatment 3 times a week. But lately, he's had a hard time getting doctor's appointments after someone in his community tested positive for the virus. It's been 4 days since his most recent treatment last week, and he's still waiting.
Because of the epidemic control in Shanghai, many hospitals are not accepting patients. My father has not had dialysis for many days. Now his feet have begun to swell. His blood potassium level is getting high. His heart also has some conditions that are life-threatening.
Dong explained that health officials and hospitals have denied responsibility, so he was forced to reach out online for help. That's when he discovered a number of other patients are stuck in similar situations.
Some people haven't had dialysis for a week. That's even worse. That's not a problem for one person, but for a community. Just in the Pudong district, there are probably hundreds or thousands of people like that. It's very dangerous.
In another Shanghai community, tragedy struck when a man fatally jumped off a building. Reports say the older man was a cancer patient and was in a lot of pain, but community leaders refused to let him leave his home to get his medication. The Epoch Times managed to interview one of the man's neighbors on Monday.
The man in our community who jumped off the building was over 70, in his 70s or 80s. He has a wife and a daughter, that poor man. I heard the man's feet broke apart when he hit the ground.
The Epoch Times reached out to the community for comment, but did not get a response.
A new report is shining more light on the possible origins of the pandemic. According to documents obtained by a nonprofit watchdog, the National Institutes of Health may have deleted genetic information about the virus from the Wuhan lab. The U.S.-based medical research agency reportedly made the change at the Chinese lab's request. The Wuhan facility has been at the center of pandemic origin controversy for over 2 years, and some suspect the virus first emerged from the lab. Kevin Hogan with NTD's News Today has more.
That watchdog is the Empower Oversight Whistleblowers Research Group, or EO. It obtained the documents through a Freedom of Information Act request and a lawsuit. The group obtained over 230 pages of documents dating from 2020. Those include emails, memos, and other correspondence between the lab and multiple NIH officials. 2 prominent officials are mentioned in the documents: former NIH director at the time, Dr. Francis Collins, and Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's said to have actively participated in the discussions and decision-making at these documents described. Empower Oversight issued a statement Tuesday. It reads, on June 5, 2020, a Wuhan University researcher requested that NIH retract the researcher's submission of a bioproject because of an error. The Wuhan researcher explained, quote, "I'm sorry for my wrong submitting." 3 days later, the NIH turned down the researcher's request, and the agency advised that it prefers to edit or replace sequences as opposed to deleting them. But 8 days later, NIH officials went ahead and deleted the genetic sequencing data, just like the Wuhan researcher requested. The researcher wanted to submit an updated version and withdraw the old one. Then the NIH concluded the discussion by saying it had withdrawn everything. The documents also say Collins and Fauci hosted a Sunday afternoon Zoom meeting. That was after another researcher, Jesse Bloom, alerted the NIH about the deleted sequences. The documents further show the following. Quote, Professor Trevor Bedford of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center later sent the group an email stating that the deleted data seemed to support the idea that the pandemic began outside the Huanan market in Wuhan and that the matter must be analyzed properly. And if the virus did originate outside of that market, It would undermine the official claim by the Chinese regime and reinforce claims that experts in the U.S. and elsewhere have that the pandemic likely started inside the Wuhan lab.
A prisoner of conscience at a detention center in Shanghai has been paralyzed due to torture. Authorities arrested him and his fiancée because they refused to denounce their faith in Falun Gong. Their family members and friends in the U.S. are appealing for their release.
Chinese Falun Gong practitioner He Binggang has been paralyzed at a detention center in Shanghai. This is according to his lawyer, who hasn't been able to talk to him over the phone until earlier this month. Authorities had cut He's contact with the outside world for more than 4 months. Deng Rong, who lives in New York, is He's family friend. She says He is in critical condition.
He is paralyzed. He can only lie down, and he cannot walk due to problems in the spine. He also deals with headaches, dizziness, urinary incontinence, and cannot fall asleep at night.
He's fiancée, Zhang Yibo, is being held at the same detention center. Authorities took both of them away last October. Their lawyer was not allowed to talk to them by phone until March 10th.
A delivery person came to his door. As soon as he opened the door, the police rushed in, took him away, along with his computer and cell phone.
He's fiancée is also a Falun Gong practitioner. Authorities took her away from her home around the same time.
The police pried open Zhang's door and took her away with her tablet, cell phone, and electronic devices.
Falun Gong is a spiritual practice rooted in Chinese tradition. It features meditative exercises and is guided by the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. 2 decades ago, the CCP launched a campaign against the practice. Millions of practitioners in China have been detained, tortured, and even killed since then. Over the past 2 decades, He had been kicked out of his university for refusing to denounce his faith. He had also been detained several times afterwards. This is not the first time he suffered physical torture while in detention. In 2010, he was half paralyzed due to torture at the same detention center. Back in 2009, Zhang was sentenced to 1.5 years in jail for refusing to denounce her faith. She was a manager at a foreign company. Her brother appealed to Chinese authorities, asking them to release Zhang and her fiancé He.
She does no harm to society. She is a law-abiding person. Just because she practices a Buddhist meditation, she was imprisoned and even sentenced. And now, 13 years later, they have arrested my sister once again.
Zhang's brother says that authorities accused Zhang and He of undermining national security. The brother says what the authorities are doing is against the law.
Next, we'd like to take a moment for an update on another situation requested by some of our viewers. They asked about the current situation in China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, also known as Southern Mongolia. Back in 2020, Human Rights Watch reported widespread protests in northern China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. There, ethnic Mongolians have boycotted schools over Beijing's push to educate students in Mandarin Chinese instead of their ethnic language. Protests like this have been rare, standing up against the ruling Communist Party's push for ethnic assimilation. But how did the situation turn out 2 years later? Earlier this month, China's Communist leader Xi Jinping told a delegation from Inner Mongolia that he is sticking to the assimilation policies. He stressed a zero-tolerance approach for anything that could, quote, destabilize China. And in Inner Mongolia, many protesters have already bowed to pressure, following 2 years of tactics aimed at pushing compliance. For Mongolian students, alternatives are running out. If they continue their education in their mother tongue, it will hinder their paths toward higher education and employment in China. Similar programs have also rolled out in Tibet and Xinjiang, home to the Tibetan and Uyghur ethnic groups. There, Mandarin Chinese has replaced ethnic minority languages as the primary instruction language in most schools. China's ruling Communist Party also deployed other policies, like curtailing religious practices and discouraging ethnic dress to push ethnic assimilation. Now, under the new language policy, Mandarin Chinese has replaced Mongolian in 3 subjects from elementary to middle schools across the region, home to over 4 million ethnic Mongolians. And that's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We are now sharing a shortened version of our program on YouTube. Full episodes can be watched on our partner platform, Epoch TV. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow. Troubling headlines and reports.
CCP government has a strategy when confronting the United States.
The U.S. loses $200 to $600 billion each year to China. That's through intellectual property theft. But how is it happening? With a little help from friends on the inside. Made in China labels flood the market, from everyday items to toys to industrial tools. And now, even some policies here in America are being shaped by the communist regime. In this special report, we peel back the layers on how the complicit actions of American elites have helped China gain an edge.